To save myself time and to get the videos up for the Unit 4 test study guide up faster, I am not creating a video for each subsection of the study guide. Rather, I'm going to create just two videos. So they will be longer, but more information is covered. So this video will focus on all of page 1 of the Unit 4 test study guide. And then the second video will focus on all of page 2. If you need to take a break, then just pause the video when I finish covering a given section and then resume when you are ready to continue. So you should have read through all of this on your own. You guys know how this works now, so I'm not going to add anything about that. You know what the extra credit option is in virtue of following the videos on intellectual courage. I had posted an incorrect link for the first video on intellectual courage. That is the video lectures that I present prior to task 1 of Unit 4. I have corrected that video link. If you're still encountering any errors, let me know, but I believe I corrected that link around 12:43 p.m. on 6/28. So there are two videos now for intellectual courage. It's the second one, though, that has the extra credit option. Make sure that you listen to everything that I say about the extra credit. Some students have been submitting some of the extra credit that I mentioned in the intellectual virtue lectures, but they're not quite hitting the mark as thoroughly or in as detailed a way as I have requested and directed in the video that covers the extra credit. So some of you who have attempted the extra credit in a given test have gotten maybe 1 or 2 points. Very few people have gotten 3 or 4, and I think I've only given one person 5 points for following all the instructions in terms of the thinking and the writing required to get full extra credit. Okay, so now let's focus on content, the actual content in your test. So I have a new category here. It's philosophy in general. There's going to be matching and fill in the blank. So one of the items that the test will present to you will have to do with the main definition that I gave you in one of 2 video lectures on the announcements page. And notice that I say video lecture, so it wasn't a video announcement, but a lecture that I gave you to open up the semester. So it's right here. I posted it on June 2nd, and it says start with Philosophy 1301, 2 required videos below. And so it's in this video that you are going to get the main definition that I stressed and that I want you to be able to complete. This is going to be in the form of multiple fill in the blank. So words will be missing from the definition, just as words have been missing from the definition for intellectual virtue that I've been testing you on. Also, you need to watch the same video with respect to what I said we were going to be focusing on, like what were the 3 branches of philosophy that I said we would focus on. What did I say was the core concept for each branch? When did we cover each branch? During Unit 2, which branch did we focus on? And what was the question that we focused on? Let me put it this way. What question from your Task 3 assignment about COVID went with which question, with which concepts? And then look at your Task 3 assignment where you wrote your second argument. With what unit, with what branch does that argument go with? And then look at your last argument for Task 3 of Unit 1. With which unit did we associate that argument, the topics or concepts in that paragraph? With which branch would we associate, or will we have associated what that argument was about? So again, this links back to what I said in the introductory video for the semester. I told you that we were going to be focusing on some questions that had to do with COVID to introduce you to philosophy and its branches and its core concepts. So basically, I want to see that you see that each of the arguments in your Task 3 assignment, where you wrote those 3 arguments, that they each correspond with a unit for the semester, with a branch that was the focus of that unit, and the core concept for that unit. So you'll need to watch all of this video, rewatch it, take good notes. Maybe you took really good notes, look at those notes. Maybe watch the video again and take your notes in light of what I just said with respect to the study guide. So do know what the gist of the branches are, like what are some general questions. You can Google these, but also go and look at the book in chapter 1. The author introduced you to each of the branches initially and gave you some questions that they like to focus on, their foci. But also, just in virtue of doing the Smart Book lessons, you've learned about the 3 branches that we focused on. So we focused on one particular branch during Unit 2, then another during Unit 3, and then one during Unit 4. So you don't need to know about all the possible branches of philosophy, all the questions and foci, just the ones that we've covered. One place to start could be your syllabus and the course schedule. Well, I don't think I say we're going to focus on this branch. Yeah, I do. I think we explore the philosophical branch of, so the syllabus might guide you as well. All right, so now let's focus on intellectual virtue, multiple fill in the blank, multiple choice, matching in terms of true, false. I actually have some other matching items. The matching items aren't just true, false, but it might be like sentence completion or matching a concept to an example or to a definition or to a point that I made in a lecture. So it could be mixed. By now, you should be used to the kinds of questions that I go over and the kind of items with respect to intellectual virtue. In case you haven't noticed or you didn't notice during Unit 3, I do reuse some items for intellectual virtue, or I rotate items. So as always, I want you to remember the definition for intellectual virtue that I stressed in a previous video. So that would be from a Unit 2 video lecture that I did on intellectual virtue. So if you don't have those notes, ask a peer if they have notes. These are notes that you needed to keep so that you could continue to use them throughout the semester. Again, you need a clear, accurate, and precise understanding of the definitions and examples first provided in the Soft Talk module. I did give to you a link to that lesson to access just below the link to the study guide. A clear, accurate, and precise understanding of what I lectured on in several short videos prior to Task 1 in Unit 2, prior to Task 1 in Unit 3, and now prior to Task 1 in Unit 4. Now, in this test, we are going to be focusing, I do want you to remember prior lessons about intellectual virtue generally. So, what is the definition that I have stressed? 2, I want to make sure that you understand what an intellectual virtue does entail and does not entail, generally speaking. I want you to know what the relationship is between virtue more generally and and vice, as I lectured on it in the intellectual sense. So you need to know those and all the terms that I associated with those. So a good place to go for this part right here is go to your notes and the study questions that you copied when you were preparing to take the Unit 3 test. So prior to completing the Unit 3 test. So in the Unit 3 folder, prior to the Task 1 folder, I went over a lecture, same thing with Unit 2. Prior to Task 1, I had a lecture on intellectual virtue, and I gave you study questions. So definitely pull your notes from all and any intellectual virtue lectures I did during Units 2 and 3, along with the study questions that I gave you in your notes that you completed in light of those study guides and the intellectual virtues, because the test could have items on there and will have some items from those previous lectures. What it will not have from the previous lectures is there will be no questions that are focused specifically on intellectual perseverance, intellectual humility, or intellectual empathy, except for the extra credit. The extra credit does have to do with intellectual empathy, but that's optional. So I'm just saying there will be no required or regular test questions focused specifically on intellectual humility, intellectual empathy, or intellectual perseverance. There will be quite a bit of focus on intellectual courage. So again, here you're going to want to make sure that you go to the 2 videos that I posted prior to Task 1 in the Unit folder. Use the study questions ahead of time. Make sure you've got your notes aligned with the study questions as you prepare to deal with some test items, making sure that you really understand intellectual courage and all of the concepts relevant to intellectual courage. All right, so now we are on the last section for this study guide, for this page of the study guide for the Unit 4 test. And as you can see, you have, wait a minute, let me go back up here and give you another clue. So when it comes to the special emphasis on intellectual courage, I do give you in that lecture some names of two opposites. For the opposite that where you have too much of something that makes you intellectually courageous, I only give you one name. When it comes to that when it comes to the name for having too little of that which makes you intellectually courageous, I give you several possible names depending on why somebody or how exactly they are lacking intellectual courage. And you're going to be able to give me any of the names for that deficit, for that opposite, for that vice associated with intellectual courage. So I've set up the test to where you can give me just one of the three names that I associated with respect to a deficit when it comes to intellectual courage. Okay, so let's now really start this multiple choice true false matching. So at the beginning of section 5, the author opens up the chapter with the story about Glaucon and the story about Gyges ring. So know what that's about. Prescriptive versus normative ethics. What is prescriptive ethics focused on? What is normative ethics focused on? What distinguishes the two? What kinds of, so make sure you understand that and a possible application. Look at the example that the author gives you with respect to Nazi Germany. And then notice with whom he associates and the focus of anthropology and with whom he associates the focus of philosophy with respect to this bullet as well. And when I say he right now, I mean Lawhead. So you're going to have one or two items for this. You might have one or two items for this. Then we have the Euthyphro problem. The author introduces you to something called divine command theory, and it comes from something called the Euthyphro problem. I'm just realizing right now, hopefully I don't misremember that he actually said the Euthyphro problem. He probably did, but if he didn't, then just focus on what he says about the divine command theory. What is the gist of the divine command theory? What does it say about the origin and status of right and wrong? What are some issues, some questions that the author presents to you about divine command theory? What are some different questions and how do they relate to different issues? So he raises a lot of questions. Lawhead shows you that there's a lot of questions and concerns associated with divine command theory. But he also, in articulating these questions, kind of categorizes them and says, hey, there's this issue of X. And then he gives you questions associated with the issue of X. So what I'm going to want you to do in the test is I'm going to give you a set of questions. I'm going to say, what issue with divine command theory do these questions point to? Or, look at these questions. They raise an issue discussed by Lawhead with respect to divine command theory. What was the gist of the issue? So keep that in mind. So that's going to be in the form of a kind of a multiple choice right there. I'll go ahead and tell you that. Now, notice that this section just says ethics. So it's really about some general introductory things to know about ethics. Obviously, if you were taking an ethics course, you would get a lot more in depth. I do teach ethics, and I'm supposed to teach a face-to-face section at Cedar Valley. If anyone wants to take that, the workload is about the same as this class, and we get to have live class discussions, so lots of opportunities to practice intellectual courage. I'm really changing after the pandemic. I'm just going to say something special, and that is that since the pandemic and teaching online, I've really reprioritized and changed my attitude and feelings and thoughts about how I should use classroom time and what to focus on and how much work to give students. And I've actually gotten rid of a lot, and I want more discussion. I want more cool, experiences in the classroom. So I'm hoping that some of you will be wondering maybe I should try to face-to-face ethics. All we discuss is ethical theory, debate it, and discuss real issues, contemporary moral problems. Okay, we'll get to share our opinions, listen to our peers. It's really fun. Okay, so consequentialism. Oh, all right, so this part of ethics. So I have this bullet here, but as you can see, there's a line space. Why is that? Because your author Lawhead introduces you to what are called categories of theory. So as you know, some theories fall under the category of consequentialism, teleological ethics. Some theories fall under the name for a category of theory called deontological ethics or formalistic ethics. I think that Lawhead should have introduced you to these broad categories of theory in section 5.0. But instead, he introduces you to them when he's focused on utilitarianism specifically, which is weird, since some of these names for these theories don't apply to utilitarianism, and knowing about these names of these theories, categories of theory, give you insight, about what differentiates one theory from another that he gives you the gist of in the introductory section. So when I say categorizations of theory or kinds of theory, this is what I'm thinking about right here. So you need to be able to tell me what is consequentialism. In fact, this is going to all be matching, actually. So either I'm going to give you true, false, or sentence completion. In fact, the matching will probably be a combination of true, false, and sentence completion or something like that. So what is consequentialism? What does it mean for any theory to be a consequentialist theory? What is it that, teleological ethics is focused on? What is the root word in teleological, and what does it mean? What about deontological ethics? What's important to deontological ethics? What does it focus on? How does that make it different from consequentialism? What is the meaning of the root word in deontological? Formalistic ethics. What is the nature of formalistic ethics? What is it focused on? How does it relate to these three kinds? These kinds of theory named here. Same thing here. How do these kinds of theories connect to consequentialism, deontological ethics, formalistic ethics? How do they compare and contrast? Just generally, get this from the beginning of 5.3. That's really if you can look at that, read that, think critically about it, you can get all the information you need from that section. This is all going to be in 5.0, and it's going to be pretty much in the beginning to the middle point. So you can just follow the order. I tried to do the study guide in the order of the reading. So at the beginning, you'll find this in the reading, and then you'll start to find this information, and then this is going to be in the section on religion and philosophy or religion and ethics in your SMART book.